dude. So vegan, gluten-free oil. What we could have done is got all the oil and then started marketing it as like a skincare routine, and then bottling it up and like selling it to everyone as a skincare product. Or like, dude, we could have come up with so many inventive solutions for oil. I don't know.
We don't know if it's a skincare product yet, though. I mean, that was just completely made up.
Oh yeah, I literally just made that up. It's definitely probably the worst possible thing for your skin.
Don't spread
crude
out
oil.
It's not organic, or maybe it is.
I mean, define organic.
Is Ethereum Hot Takes.
Episode 3. Yeah, James, you want to do an intro real quick?
Yeah, should we? Okay, because I feel like we're gonna cut that out. Should we re-record, or should we just cut that out?
No, we're not cutting that out. That's the spice.
All right, not cutting that out. Let's go ahead. Let's start. So this is Ethereum Hot Takes, day number 3, and lo and behold, we have a special guest, Mr. Ash, who is like super credentialized on Twitter. If you read it, it'll blow your mind. He's got so many amazing things, like Forbes list and all that great stuff. So we have been blessed to have people smarter than us on Ethereum Hot Take. So we're going to dive into some.
Well, the smarter piece, definitely not true.
Look at that hair and those glasses.
Fun to be here.
Way smarter.
All right. Well, no matter what, we're here to hopefully get some good info out and explore some interesting DeFi topics. Because Ash, it sounds like you got some good knowledge and some hot takes. So yeah, let's see where we get.
Yeah, excited for the conversation and just riffing on a bunch of things.
Go.
Yeah, and as Kim said, thank you so much for joining, man.
Of course.
Day 3 of the podcast. We have 15 subscribers. We're absolutely crushing it. 15 subscribers, and we have Forbes 30 under 30 here. I mean, come on. This is crazy.
Egregious, dude.
So yeah, I think this is going to be a really good conversation. This originated from like Ash just like texting me a question and us being like, oh, why don't we just like discuss it live, because this is an interesting topic. So along a similar vein, if you have any interesting questions or topics that you want to debate and you're listening to this for whatever reason, just reach out and you can come on the podcast and we can talk about it live and just have a discussion and flesh these things out in person. So yeah, with that, yeah, you want to do a brief intro, Ash?
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, thanks for having me. I'm Ash Egan, working at Accomplice, where I've been for the past 2 years. Before that, colleagues with these guys at Consensus. Really fun getting the venture arm off the ground over there. And really since 2015 have been investing in all things crypto networks, infrastructure, applications, you name it. So, there's not one sort of protocol that I'm like, this is the sole winner. I think there's going to be a bunch of quote unquote winners, both companies and crypto networks. And, I think within the Ethereum ecosystem, there's a ton of exciting stuff. And just to frame it a little bit, we've been seeing all these reports around stablecoin growth, which is super exciting, for Ethereum and I think crypto in general. But my comment, like there's pros and cons and there's different flavors of stablecoins. I think just when we look at sort of this growth of stablecoins on the pro side, just value on chain has gone up, drastically. If you look at stablecoins from last year, as stablecoins are used, you're using ETH as gas. So, some of it's flowing back. I think what I'm trying to better understand is if stable coins grow too large or you have some type of malicious behavior with the issuers, assuming it's centralized, could that pose a risk to Ethereum as we know it? And that was sort of just, the text, just to give a little bit of color on that piece. But look, I think there's a bunch of other stuff that I'd love to touch on in this conversation.
Cool. So I think we can dissect that question down into like probably 100 different parts. I think there's a lot of topics we can cover on that. I think maybe the first point that I would like to touch on is something we touched on in the previous podcast, is the entire kind of Ethereum DeFi space being built on top of these stable coins. Like almost every kind of DeFi product relies on them in some way. And I envision like even beyond DeFi, just a lot of different things being reliant on stable coins. And to Ash's point, like especially, I mean, there's not even just risk with the centralized stable coins. I would argue there's probably even more risk with the decentralized stable coins, things like DAI. I mean, as we talked about before, it's relatively good, but it's still extremely immature, and it has only existed for a pretty short amount of time. So, yeah, I don't know. Kames, do you have any hot takes on that?
Okay, so my only rebuttal to that is like, yes, I think because DAI and these other ones, we're still trying to figure it out, such as the stability rate, like going down to 0 now, right? And that's like, you know, this lever that they have. But on the other side, where you said they're more risky, I don't know. My hot take would be Tether. Like, I feel like Tether for how
That's a super risky one.
massive, yeah, because it's like, what if there was a bank run on Tether and people are like, I really want my money, and you know, I don't know if it's been verified, like whether they have that. Ash, you may be more familiar with that, but like, do they have
reports? Yeah, I mean, we've seen, and I feel like this is ongoing. You know, what are the reserves actually? And I think it was collateralized. Last I checked was 75%, which is actually much higher than I thought. And looking at the traditional financial system, the sort of, you're talking about the amount of credit that's being used within the traditional financial system is exponentially larger than in crypto. But you don't want to run into an issue of where credit and sort of like these areas that are not like a lot of crypto folks I feel like don't think about, but can actually end up being systemic risks. And I think like the risk of centralized stable coins with some type of backdoor or ability to be malicious, there are different risks there than I'd say with like the decentralized stable coins. So, and then there's obviously there's a bunch of different flavors around stable coins.
So just on the topic of backdoor, because I think that's an interesting one. And I don't know if this quite like is considered a backdoor, but during the Gitcoin CLR, so the quadratic funding and matching for open source projects, it was interesting that they discovered people were trying to send Tether to donate. I believe it was Tether. And what ended up being discovered was in their contract, even though it was ERC20 compliant, they could enable transaction fees. So if you started sending Tether, they would take a percentage of those transaction fees. And that could only be done for whales as well. And it's like, that was not well known that was in the contract. And like, that almost seems like a backdoor in a way. Like one day they can just flip that on and suddenly they're taking transaction fees from everybody.
That's in the Tether ERC20?
I can double check, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was one of the stable coins. I'll look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure it was Tether.
That is super interesting. And that goes back to, I feel like we're hitting on these, we keep coming back to these recurring themes of how do you, like one of these themes is how do you kind of uncover all of these maybe potentially lesser well-known functionalities of these smart contracts? Like you as an individual, like average everyday user isn't going to go through and look at the smart contract code to uncover the fact that there's this backdoor switch that they can enable to turn on transaction fees. So yeah, I think we have like a lot of maturing as an industry to do before I would say we can, I guess, mitigate a lot of this type of risk.
Yeah. And so that's like, I guess that's one kind of backdoor, like technical, but Ash, like you mentioned other backdoors, and it sounds like you have a more traditional finance background. Do you kind of see these other backdoors that exist that are outside of code, or what were you kind of getting at when you were saying backdoor in that sense?
Well, I think it's like I look at these stable coins. I think a lot of folks just call them permissionless stable coins, and they're talking about the whole basket of stable coins that are being like ERC, sort of all the ones that are getting built on top of Ethereum. I think the reality is they're programmable, not permissionless. and every, you know, sort of every issuer has a different process. Like USDC was circling Coinbase. They've done I think quite a good job around publicizing or just like, you know, documenting you know, sort of USDC creation and all these things. But you know, if stable coin growth continues, you know, thinking around like blacklisting wallets, you know, transferability, you know, you got to think that some of these exchanges who are behind some of these stable coins, like, may be pressured to make them far less permissionless than they're oftentimes sort of pegged.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're going to see, as the truly permissionless and truly decentralized stablecoin ecosystem matures a little bit, I think we're going to see a migration away from the centralized stablecoins like Tether and USDC and whatever else there is out there nowadays. I think we're just going to, those baskets are very large right now. I think mainly due to kind of, I think it's mainly a kind of, it's been ease of use and reliability to some extent, and accessibility through some of the major exchange platforms. But I think as we see the proliferation of decentralized stablecoins and we come up with better models for them, I do think we're gonna see a shift, like a massive shift away from the more centralized coins. And so I hope that we're not going to be as subject to some of these issues or concerns as we would be if we kind of stayed in the centralized stablecoin realm. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, James.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm not as familiar, I think, with a lot of people in this ecosystem about, you know, the stable coins and really what it means, but I'm with you. I think the more experimentation we have and more of like this less centralized owner, like, I don't know if MakerDAO can be considered, but like the centralized owner of DAI, but they're pretty, you know, they're kind of the final state. They lead the community. But it's interesting to see what people like Amin are doing with MetaToken and really kind of pushing the boundaries of what's next. And can you have like a truly destabilized or decentralized stable coin? So yeah, I think I would love to, you know, research more. But do you guys, just because we touched the Tether backdoor thing, I pulled up the contract. Should we just take a moment to kind of show like where that's at and what's possible?
Why not, dude? That sounds great.
Of course.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. Screen share. So I currently went to the Etherscan website. Like, you can just search in Tether and then you can go to their ERC20 smart contract. And this is the code that was published on Etherscan that's like verified. So they verified this is the actual contract running at the address. And so if you scroll down, starting at line 171, you'll see this transfer from function. And what like is different than most ERC20s is it doesn't have this code about fees. So you'll start to see this language about fees and the maximum fee and the lower fee. And it looks like this logic is basically around like if it hits a certain level of like transaction size. I haven't actually looked too deeply into this. These are just comments around it that you'll start getting charged these fees. So one day, if there's just enough transactions and they're like, all right, we want to start making money, they just flip the script and suddenly this is enabled. And people may not even know that they're getting money taken off of their transactions. So if you want to check it out, you can go to Etherscan, you can check out this address, and you can actually see the code for yourself to see this open backdoor in a way.
Where do those fees go? Do we know?
Ooh, I don't know. That's probably a really good thing to figure out. Back to their bank directly.
Yeah, maybe it goes towards funding open source projects.
That would be amazing.
maybe that should be our free model for our amazing stablecoin that we create.
Hey, but I want to turn this question around on Ash, because you seem to be way more familiar with this. Like, do you have an opinion on Metacoin, and like, have you researched that at all? What Amin proposed and kind of like what he's getting at? And do you see a need for kind of more of these stable tokens, or do you think like a basket of 4 or 5 is enough for the ecosystem?
I'm all about more innovation, you know, more offerings, more optionality. I think, and I look at it in I look at it in both sides of the table. Like, on one side, it's like, these are topics that crypto folks are talking about a lot. I think if you go to like the mass audience, they're looking at sort of like stable coins and like crypto is like, okay, is this a place I can get yield? And, do I need to go through like 8 different steps to even like participate in any of these applications and stuff like that?
Yep.
Those are still, in my opinion, like the abstraction of a lot of like the clunky crypto, just apps in general within the space. Like,
Yep.
it's just not there, right? So I think what we have to be cognizant of is like not getting in our own heads. I think like, but ultimately you want a whole, variety of options, and the hope is the market will decide on, the select few winners. But we suck as an industry at delivering, at like making these products super easy to use, and expanding the industry. But just my opinion.
Yeah, we definitely do suck. That is probably the number one thing that like we are horrible at translating to the average user. But so I have a question for you, because like you mentioned the market figuring it out and like they'll figure out the best stablecoin. Like, I don't know. Because I feel like there's a lot of whales still within this cryptocurrency ecosystem, and they're able to like push markets relatively quickly, as opposed to like the bigger stock exchanges and whatnot, where it's a little more chaotic and balanced. Like, and you notice with this LendFme hack, there was 25 million hacked, and they had copied compounds like contracts and whatnot. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, will the average user actually be able to make these smart market decisions and have enough information to really know the difference between USDC and DAI, or they're just like stable token, whichever one I want, and whatever has best marketing is kind of going to win? Like, how do you see these market forces being applied for people's decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to our comments earlier. Like, we need, I think, more metrics around risk, what you're exposed to. Like, and there's so many, there's protocol, like the crypto network risk, there's custody, sort of like losing your keys risk. There's sort of like these backdoors, like, with, if you're pooling and, like, does someone actually have the keys behind that? There's sort of like peg, like actually like breaking the peg. I mean, there's so many different attack surfaces. And I just think like for these products though to reach, there's different audiences, right? Like, I think non-US users are looking at these stable coins as a way to just get exposure to USD. But for here in the US, like for folks here in the US, like, why would I hold USDC versus USD? It would probably, or name your stable coin. It would probably because I can either lend it out, I can stay, I can provide liquidity, and I can get some type of return on it. But I think that potential return, I mean, you gotta reflect the risk associated with it. And so that just comes down to like us as an industry doing a better job of, analyzing these risks, figuring out metrics, like, and best standards and all these things.
Quick question for you on a topic that you just raised. Do you think that a lot of these USDC and USDT holdings are foreign nationals trying to get exposure to USD? Do you think that's where a lot of the activity comes from? I didn't even think about that.
That's one of the narratives I've been hearing. But I think we could do, we could look at wallet. We should do like a wallet analysis and whatnot to,
Yep.
Because I think we can get a much better understanding. But yeah, I totally think that that's a narrative. And then, I think it's a lot of exploration and playing around with these various products. And there's some awesome stuff happening there, right? Like I'm playing around with, 10 products a day, different dApps, protocols, you name it. And I think some people are looking at it in a much more serious approach. Like they're putting hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of bucks, and, looking at, this advertised APR. And, like it, in a lot of instances, it hasn't broke for them. So
yeah, I did a disclaimer last time or the time before. I gotta do it again. Please be careful. These things aren't zero risk. They're being marketed as zero risk. They are not. There's like very large inherent risks to interacting with any of these things. So like, please be careful when you are depositing any significant sum of money into one of these DeFi protocols. But that being said, like they are very cool and extremely interesting. And I think like the aha moment truly comes when you interact with them. Like for me, I can read about these things and conceptualize them as much as I want, but until I actually go and interact with it, it doesn't like really click. But once I actually do interact with these DeFi protocols and just things on Ethereum generally, every single time it seems magical to me. Like it's really cool. So I highly encourage you to kind of go out there and test these things for yourselves.
Totally. So I got a question for you, Ash, because you mentioned you're using a ton of apps, and I feel like we got to get back to like Ethereum hot and spicy a little bit. So like in terms of who's absolutely crushing it in your mind with all the apps, and then who's absolutely not crushing it and just like is totally not living up to what they're preaching.
Yeah, I mean, I think DYDX is doing a phenomenal job. Like that's a team that has just been executing, just looking at volume and rolling out a whole suite of offerings. And like, I look at those guys as more of a fat dApp. They're doing some stuff they were sort of using third parties for. Now they're doing a lot of the market making in house and whatnot. But yesterday they announced the BTC Perpetual, which was super cool. I think, this AMM space I'm really excited about. We invested in Balancer alongside the placeholder team, and like their liquidity, I'm a big fan of products that are democratizing some type of activity that was only offered to like a select few. And I think, Balancer and Uniswap are democratizing market making, and it's just like, another subsegment of getting yield or sort of having diversity across your holdings and whatnot. There are a bunch of teams, and I don't want to be biased because I'm an investor in a few of these things. Projects where I've been unimpressed.
Hot take.
I think
put them on blast, baby. Put them on blast.
Yeah,
or maybe didn't even live up to their marketing standards. Maybe not impressed, but just like some way, just were not accurate. It could be, I guess.
Within the Ethereum ecosystem, there's so many.
Maybe
like
Tron.
I was gonna say or Tron.
Outside the Ethereum ecosystem. The list is countless. I remember right after I left Consensus, I read every single white paper, and it was like, what have they proposed they're going to do, and what have they actually done? It's remarkable to see like the discrepancies of these white papers to like actual like live products. Some of these, it's like they're just really loud and noisy, and they market all the time, and they know what the current metrics are, like numbers of wallets, like, sort of like transactions, throughput, and all these things, and they just paint a big picture. And then if you really look sort of like at these projects and like go to all the apps, you're like, with Tron, I was playing around with like just a few of them because I was like, all right, I got to play around with this stuff. And it's like clearly, a lot of these metrics are clearly spoofed. And I think I don't want to jump ahead here, but like, I do think this concept of a productive wallet or like a productive user is going to start to come to fruition, where it's not just like wallets created, like all the three of us together, we probably have like a few hundred Ethereum wallets, right? It's going to be around like actual like deposited, locked, staked, daily activity streams, like actual work that you're doing for these protocols. And some, Tron in particular, have done a really good job of just marketing arbitrary stats, I'd say.
Yeah. And I actually think, in addition to that, I think we're going to see kind of the proliferation of people wanting to associate their identity with their wallets. I think in some instances, you're obviously not going to want to, because you might be doing some like, let's say, shady stuff. And I think we're going to trend more and more in the direction of you actually wanting to identify yourself. So like in this world of verifiable claims and credentials and decentralized identifiers, like your Ethereum address is going to come to represent yourself, and you're going to start to want to build up a reputation around that account. And so I think my initial question was going to be like, what do you think are the variables that would identify like a productive user? But I think they're going to be pretty easy to distinguish, because we're going to have like real identities represented by these addresses. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, you see some of that with like just the ENS handshake, just like people actively going out there and like buying brands that are associated with addresses. I also think, so you have like, I sort of go back and forth between the two. It's like, you know, why are you going to create a profile if there's if the suite of offerings that you can access and do stuff with is just limited? Like, are you going to actually take the time to like build a rich profile? Or is it the reverse, where you have all of these dApps and new experiences that are getting built out, and then people are interacting still in a pseudonymous manner, and then they begin, you know, sort of like there's an overlay, whether it's like sort of self-selected, or like the network starts to like frame you as like, you know, your activity, and like I don't know. I go back and forth.
I feel like, yeah, I go back and forth too, but I'm leaning towards it being the latter. I think you're not going to like manually go and set up your profile. Maybe you will to some extent. Maybe you'll be like, here's my email and a picture, maybe. But I think most of your identity is going to be derived from your activity on the network. And like you said, if there's not even that activity to do, like you're not going to have these rich profiles. So it's going to be hard to identify individuals on networks like Tron or EOS, where there's like not real stuff to do. But in Ethereum, like my profile is becoming, you know, my proof of attendance tokens that I get by attending these various events. It's my Gitcoin kudos. It's my transactional activity. It's my ENS address. It's a culmination of all these things I'm interacting with anyway. And just like by interacting with the Ethereum ecosystem, I'm starting to build this holistic profile of who I am. So I think it'll be more frictionless than like manually creating your profile.
So you mentioned these, you know, these POPE tokens, the proof of attendance protocol. Like, do you feel, and I'm going to tiny little pivot, but do you feel like those systems will help do Sybil resistance on chain? Because 100%. a lot of dApps still need to ensure like you're one-to-one human, but like you can have multiple wallets and pretend to do a lot of things. Or will there be a need for like verifiable credentials later on chain? Or do you think it's going to be like, I showed up to these 10 hackathons and ETH Global gave me these things and I'm verifiable human? Or what do you think kind of the solution is going to be around proving that humanness?
I think the identity part? It's going to be a culmination of all these, like an aggregation of all of these things. I think like POPE tokens will be one of them. It's going to be everything, but I think you brought up a really good point of Sybil resistance. Like right now, we have to spend a lot of thought on designing systems to be Sybil resistant. So like our consensus mechanisms are like almost like proof of work is in place to combat like Sybil attacks. But like what if we could actually identify real humans? Like we're much less subject to these Sybil attacks. And so our mechanism design, I think, is going to look it's going to be like a lot easier once we have these other Sybil resistance mechanisms that are fueled by reputation and identity. Does that kind of make sense?
For us, maybe. For the average user, probably not. But to tie this back in a little bit, I'd love to talk about a little bit about like DAOs and DeFi. So recently Compound, like they're now pushing, you know, full steam ahead with their Compound governance token, and they're going to completely decentralize kind of some of the decision making. Ash, as you kind of start to experiment with these protocols and see these, do you see that as being a really good positive? Is that going to take a while to really get their feet under the ground? Is it going to be kind of the same as MakerDAO, where it's maybe going to be a low percentage of people making decisions anyways? Like, just where do you see DAOs and people who need to be individuals, you know, you need those to be Sybil attack resistant, playing kind of a part in these bigger decentralized finance tools and systems and kind of playground that we're building?
Yeah, I mean, I think Compound has done a remarkable job, because these are things that Robert has been talking about for some time, right? And it's just like, this is the next step in an evolution that's, you know, been happening for, 2 or so years. I think for some projects, the community is going to be much more involved, and you can actually lean more on the community initially to evolving sort of like the crypto network or the DApp or whatever it may be. But I think a lot of times people talk about decentralization, and there's so many different ways to look at decentralization. Like where I get the community owned aspect is awesome. For some decisions, they need to be top down, product oriented decisions. Maybe the community is putting an input on that, but I think you can't completely rely on your users to actually build products in a lot of instances. And so, yeah, I just think it just depends on, today the stuff that seems to be having product market fit on chainers like DeFi. Some of these DAOs are beginning to emerge, but I almost think the autonomous stuff, it should be DOs. I think a lot of the some of this stuff needs intervention and needs to be top down, but I don't know, hard to say. It's hard to say.
So you mentioned this idea of a user and then them not really being a good fit. But I think we're all kind of familiar with this idea of power users, right? On Reddit, maybe 2% of the people make content and then everyone else is kind of just upvoting and just making comments. Do you feel there's maybe a play though with power users of some of these protocols who maybe represent some of the baseline users? Because I know Rick Burton, who's super involved with a lot of different projects, his new thing is trying to become an elected official for the MakerDAO governance and being kind of still a user, not part of the foundation, but maybe considered a power user. Do you see that at all playing a part, these really strong users, or it still kind of needs to just be good financial people at the top and they're making the recommendations and they are so familiar with the protocol that makes sense still?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to understand everyone's motives, right? I think the sort of on the optimistic side, I think people want to build sustainable crypto networks, applications, what their ability to do so. And I'm not talking about one person in particular, I'm just talking about, I think the idea of a company, and I think Joe, in terms of organizing consensus, the idea of a company could change a lot over the next 3 years, where it's, and then I think that changes the compensation models and stuff like that. And maybe you do have a group of super users who are the ones who are actually building out new offerings, features, all these things. And then the sort of the wide array of users are delegating, they're sort of being okay, I trust this person, they've done well in the past, I trust them to make the right decisions sort of going forward. But yeah, I don't think you can rely on if you let every single user of a product say I want this offering, I want this feature, you just end up in just be a shitstorm, right? So delegation definitely needs to happen. But how small is that subsegment? How many of these delegates are there? How many? I think it's again, it's going to be case by case.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty hard to impose those things. I think they just kind of, they're a naturally emergent structure. You naturally see these kind of power users and decision makers and representatives emerge in these decentralized systems. And so I think it's almost, I don't know, maybe in some instances it's good to say, okay, there's going to be 5 delegates or 10 delegates or whatever. But I think it's almost better to just kind of naturally see how the system evolves in some cases to try to find the optimal kind of representative structure or hierarchy.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can look at examples where it's gone terribly. I mean, a lot of people were talking about the theoretical issues with delegated proof of stake, especially EOS, the 21 masternodes, for since the EOS white paper came out. And then sort of we saw, what was it, probably 6 or 8 or so months ago, just malicious activity from those, I forgot what they're called, the 21 the block producers have a particular name. I forget what it is exactly, but there was malicious behavior there. And yeah. It was I think if you look back, it's like, should they have, it's like earmarking it at 21, was that their mistake? Sort of who they chose, was that the mistake? Not having enough flexibility, or not being able, not like actively forking the network, like where did they go wrong? But like, I think we can look at that as an example. It's like, they're not in a great position now.
That's actually an amazing example. I love that. And I think they probably went wrong in all of those ways. Just generally not a good consensus mechanism for a layer 1 chain. Like maybe that makes sense for a layer 2 chain. Maybe it makes sense for a plasma chain. I think like an EOS type DPoS model on top of layer 1 Ethereum as a layer 2 chain makes a lot of sense for a consortium. Really does not make much sense at all for like a permissionless decentralized layer 1. So, yeah. I would like to kind of bring the topic back around to our original focus a little bit, which was like value accrued on top of the chain versus value of security on the chain. And I think there's like one really big controversial topic. There's a lot of things we can talk about, but one thing I want to hit on first is there's been recent discussions around I guess some people are worried that because the returns for staking in DeFi or like gaining interest in DeFi could theoretically be higher than the rewards you earn for staking in proof of stake, that a significant amount of capital will be staked in DeFi as opposed to staked for consensus. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear you guys' thoughts.
But just quickly, are you talking about the amount that's staked in the Beacon chain, like for
Correct.
ETH2?
Yes.
Okay.
Like that, the amount staked in Beacon chain for ETH2 versus the amount staked in DeFi protocols. And the worry is that we'll have less security, or like we won't have a significant number of people staking in the ETH2 Beacon chain because people get better rewards or like better returns for staking in these DeFi protocols. And so they'll lock their money up there instead.
Yeah, well, and also just to clarify, so ETH2, like the Beacon chain won't even launch unless it hits a certain amount of ETH that's actually locked. So I think that's like one misunderstanding that, and that number I believe is variable. I forget what it is exactly. I think Vitalik's recent example, just around what the actual mechanics, if you're locking in the Beacon chain, let's say 1 million Ether locked, that's going to be something like an 18% interest rate. But you can't withdraw it, right? Like you have to wait until phase 2 or phase 3 to actually be able to do stuff with that. Yeah, I don't know. It's apples to oranges. Like the institutional buyers of ETH, they're going to be like, what? I locked my ETH and get ETH? Like I'm locking it in what? I can't take it out. It goes back to like the superpower thing and like the type of actual asset holder. But yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And my take on it is the risk of staking on the Beacon chain is significantly lower than putting your money in DeFi protocols. Like I personally would be very comfortable putting every single one of my ETH on Beacon chain and like generally participating
from day one. So like the first day, it's sort of like
maybe not
contracts live.
maybe I'll wait a few days. But generally my hypothesis is like that is such a like key piece of infrastructure, and it's like it's so essential that if something goes wrong, there'll be a fork to fix whatever went wrong. Like if people are losing ETH through proof of stake in a way that is not intended, my assumption is there will be a fork to like return that lost ETH, because you can't have stuff going wrong with the staking process or else we're all totally screwed. So I view the risk of staking maybe like a few weeks in as like close to zero. Whereas DeFi, I say like 40% chance of loss. That's like we talked about last time, like very high chance of loss.
it depends on, like what DeFi or what offering you're using to like get yield on your
Totally.
ETH, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you guys saw in the DForce and LendF example, like the hackers sent it to Compound afterwards, like they clearly have faith in like other offerings,
That's a good point.
So there's different tiers of risk in these DeFi products, but I'm of the mindset that there's going to be a lot more that's locked in DeFi and in these various offerings compared to sort of like when the contract goes live to lock in the beacon chain. And who knows, maybe it could change after like Vitalik gives a talk and stuff like that. But I'll say institutional investors who are thinking about buying ETH now, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? What do you mean I have to lock it in the contract and like I can't use it for X amount of months or years?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and Billy, I just want to say, man, you must have a lot of confidence in Prismatic Labs to really hit it like day number 1, no bugs. So shout out to them for doing that. But I have a slightly different take on that. Like, I actually think the active users, the power users of Ethereum, are going to continue to stay like using DeFi. Like, that's where they'll see a lot of opportunity. There'll be DeFi, there'll be other things. And I think a few of the big exchanges are actually going to make the play to basically, once staking is ready, like in my mind, Coinbase will probably just send out a massive email to all their users and say, hey, can we use your Ethereum to basically make the network more secure? Like, click yes. And suddenly they'll just have an army of validators. And it's the average user, like my mom, who's just got like 3,000 or 4,000 of ETH just sitting. She never checks Coinbase, like never does anything. But they're like, hey, do you want a 5% return over the next year on your ETH? Just click this email. And like, I could see those type of users who are totally undertapped right now actually becoming the security layer where it's hands off and you don't need to know DeFi and you don't need to know all these words. And then it's going to continue to be the power users who actually do stay in DeFi and like eke out a little bit of those extra returns that you just won't get in staking.
That's a really good point. I think that is the biggest stakers, hands down, are going to be the exchanges. And so we're shifting control of the network away from miners and into the hands of the exchanges. And is that what we want to do?
But not entire, like just looking at centralized exchanges and like the market share that decentralized exchanges and like DeFi, DeFi or decentralized exchanges are, they're not catching up to centralized exchanges, but like where we were last year and the year prior, it's like, damn, this stuff is moving along. And, like, I think there's going to be a bunch of different ways you can custody and hold your assets and all these things. And there's going to be a bunch of different ways to stake, whether you want to go with like Bison Trails, like a blue chip, or if you want to sort of go delegate to like, some down the street or something like that. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of different flavors of these things. It's interesting looking through the lens of like being your own bank and versus like entrusting a third party, and that sort of mindset I think ripples down into like all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff is gonna, like you said, it's gonna come down to risk versus reward. I think you'll have like the blue chip operators that will take like a more significant fee than like Joe Schmo down the street who's like, I'll stake for you for 0.001% fee, but like it's also my computer running in my basement.
Don't go to him.
Or maybe do if you want to take that risk.
Or maybe do. So just while we're on the topic of like centralized exchanges and, a little bit of like, maybe they're going to have a lot of power in the future and, different takes. So we saw recently with Binance and our favorite leader, Justin Sun of Tron, like they did a hostile takeover of Steemit, right? Like they used their users' funds, and without them knowing, they kind of did a fork of Steemit and were like, hey, we're the new rulers. Thank you. Power be to us.
No way. I didn't know that.
Oh, really? Yeah, dude.
No.
This was like about a month and a half ago. They forked the chain, added their new rules, and they used all the funds on their centralized exchange to do it. And so we're getting now a lot into more of like, power by token and making decisions with tokens and DAOs and whatnot. Do you think there'll be consumer pushback on like I'm only going to use a centralized exchange that can't use my tokens without my permission, or will people even think that far ahead? And if so, will centralized exchanges also start to be able to make decisions on a DAO basis by using their funds? And like, what does that look like when suddenly they're like major power brokers just because they're holding people's wallets?
I think, yeah, I mean, I looked at that and I was tracking in real time and I'm like, damn, Binance is going to lose a ton of credibility around this. And they spun it the right, they marketed it, they try to like, just spin it in a different way. But it was like, well, there's clearly some type of collusion. And I just think like exchanges, if you take a long-term mindset, like that's just so silly to do. Like users, like people within the crypto community saw that and they're just like, damn, okay, well, not gonna hold assets on Binance. And I think it depends on the sort of like the education of your users. I think a lot of people see that they're like, what do you guys talk about? Forks, steams, hives, like what are we talking about, right? Are we talking about Animal Crossing? Or are we talking about crypto?
Yep.
So, but like the education is going to improve. You're going to have like, maybe you have like these protocol politicians, but you're going to have people that are like, yo, this is wrong. Get your assets off of this exchange. And, if you have that kind of reputation, like just, people are going to pull their assets.
I would be hopeful that they do, but I think people are just so lazy and complacent that they're just like not going to. And I think as soon as we see the next bull run happen, we're going to see an inflow of absolutely clueless people who just have no idea what we're talking about. And they're going to throw all their money in these centralized exchanges and not care at all about the governance decision making that is going on behind the scenes with their tokens.
We'll see. I probably am somewhere in the middle. Like, I don't know if a lot of users will do it, but I kind of see like what was getting at, like if there's bad news and the general sentiment is like, ooh, Binance is bad. Like, even if I don't know the technicals and I think I'm playing Animal Crossing with all these hives, I'm like probably going to pull my money anyways and go somewhere else, even though I don't understand it. But like, everyone says they're bad, so therefore they must be, and I'll do something. Point. It'll be interesting to see if someone builds a bridge between like, oh, I want to exit Binance real quick and go to Coinbase, but I'm not technical. Like, how do I swap my money from one centralized exchange to the other?
I mean, it's not that hard, like.
Well, tell that to my mom.
Yeah, no, I get it. But it's the good thing is you have alternatives that are getting built in parallel. And like, I think the day historically it was like, oh, you have Ledger, Trezor, and I think like mobile wallets, there's going to be a reimmersion of paper wallets. Like there's a bunch of different alternatives beyond just like, oh, I got to order my Trezor Ledger. Like it's going to take 14 days, I still have to like go to this website, still have to figure out how to transfer and stuff like that. Like, I just think there's more alternatives. But totally, like the average user still quite confused on what's happening under the hood here.
Yeah, I had someone recently ask me if like the address field was their physical address, and I was like, oh no.
The answer is yes. Put your physical address in there. They will ship you crypto. So we've been going for a while. Like we've covered a lot. Like, should we continue into another big topic, or is there something that we want to like impart on the wisdom of what we're talking about, like a summary of any of this or any good takeaways for people who've once again made it this far?
I have like a really big topic that I want to cover, but like Ash, if you're willing to come on again sometime, like maybe we talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to come on whatever. I feel like we could. I mean, I think we're all three similar in that we could talk about this stuff for days on end. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we got some good meat in here. And it's like, I feel like this is a good first go. But yeah, if you guys want to cover like one or two other topics, happy to, this call or the next one.
I just have to run to a meeting soon, so I might need to first call it.
Billy, the endless meeting man. who
my
is
entire life.
probably has seen one of the most packed calendars that I've ever seen.
They're all fake meetings. Yeah. My headphones are dying as well, so I think we're going to start running into technical difficulties.
Perfect time to end it then. James, you
This
want
was fun.
to sing us out?
Hot take, go to Tron. No, just kidding. Don't go to Tron. No, yeah, let's do an exit. Once again, thank you everyone coming to Ethereum Hot Takes. This was definitely a longer one. Also, Ash, thank you for joining us. You are our first Ethereum Hot Take guest, so super appreciate it. We hope to have you on again soon because it sounds like we got some more interesting topics. And this is Ethereum Hot Takes over.